we left off? We left off with Isaac, and he has just almost been sacrificed, and God sent a substitute at the last minute. I mean, last second. I mean, almost. If you were talking to Abraham, you would say that is literal, because he's got the knife in his hand. He may have had his head tilted back. He may be ready to do this. That's how they sacrificed the animals. They didn't stab like that. They slit their throat. And I don't know if he was, I don't know. I wasn't there. And there isn't a drawing in my Bible that's from God to tell me exactly how it was done. So it's up to our imagination to figure that out. But can you imagine being Isaac? That must have affected him for the rest of his life. And he goes on and he grows up, and Sarah lives to see him turn maybe 30, 23, something like that. So she sees quite a bit. I've forgotten the number. And then he's now 40, and it's time for a wife. They send back to Haran, where Abraham came. They get him a wife. He comes back, and as she's coming back, God renews the covenant. Only this time, it's directly to Isaac. So it's really neat. So God takes that covenant that he gave to Abraham, and he gives it to Isaac. So it is direct now. It's not like, okay, this is what my dad said. It's direct. It's direct to Isaac. So that's in Genesis. Excuse me if I say Exodus. I've been all over Exodus all week, so I haven't been all over Genesis all week. So it's in verse 24. And it says, chapter 26, verse 24. And the Lord appeared that same night and said to him, he's down in Beersheba at the moment, I am the God of your father Abraham. Do not fear, for I am with you. I will bless you and multiply your descendants for the sake of my servant Abraham. And that is a summary of the same covenant that he gave to Abraham. He's going to get it. Isaac's going to get it a second time. You know how Abraham got it more than once? Isaac is going to get it directly from the words of God more than once. And the second time, wait a minute, that was the second time, excuse me. The first time was earlier in the chapter, 26, 2 through 5. And it's in there, he says, don't go down to Egypt. There's all this stuff going on. There's another famine, and he's going to go down to Egypt to get food. Egypt is the place on the map that almost always has food because of this delta. All right? They almost always have food. So when there's a famine anywhere, the temptation is to go down to Egypt. And that's exactly what Abraham did. That's exactly what Isaac's going to do. Jacob considers doing that. And obviously, Joseph ends up down there. So when there's a famine in Egypt later, that's massive. Like we say, oh yeah, there's going to be a famine in Egypt. That means the whole area is wiped out because that's their food source. That would be like saying for the United States that the whole Midwest and the Central Valley will not produce food for 7 years.
Wow.
Okay? And that feeds what? 80% of the United States, Or so, I don't know, I'm making up numbers, but some huge amount. And so for that to happen would be very critical. And so that was a big thing for that to happen. So anyway, so I just wanted to point out that God repeated that covenant directly to Isaac. He's going to repeat it again to Jacob. So you know the story. Isaac's going to, he's actually going to marry Rebekah. And Rebekah is of the same line. She's Laban's sister, which is Haran's, daughter, which is Terah's. Anyway, if you go through the line, there they are. They're all related there. And that was a normal function back then. That's not so normal now to marry your second cousin, but was normal back then. And it kept them from marrying into hopefully idolatry of the Canaanites. So that's one of the things that when they come down to Jacob and Esau, Esau gets mad at his dad for giving the blessing to Jacob, so he goes and takes 2 more Canaanite wives. And they cause so much trouble in that family that it was Rebekah's curse for the rest of her life, was to have Esau and his wives in her vicinity, while her beloved son is way off in the other area because he had to flee. So anyway, that's just, when we talk about this family, this is probably the epitome of a dysfunctional family. Especially when we get down to Jacob's family and his kids. That's a really dysfunctional family, and I will kind of run over that real quick. So anyway, Jacob has, he does the trick Esau thing. He gets the blessing from his dad. That blessing is his dad, Isaac, passing the Abrahamic blessing on to Jacob. And he goes, that's what that is. So that's a real big thing to them. They find that that's very serious and very important. Still, when in Jacob's mind, he's fleeing for his life because Esau is out to get him. He comes to a place called Bethel. And Bethel means house of God. You guys remember that? Well, Beth, and the letter for the T and the letter for the TH is the same letter. Okay? So Beth means house, and El is the beginning of God. Elohim. Okay? This is house of God. So that's the name of this town, and Jacob is there. He sleeps there that night out in the wilderness. He's got a rock for a pillow, and this is the big ladder to heaven thing, and angels coming up and down. And I think it's interesting that we always want to know what the ladder's about and what the angel's about, but the most important thing is, what did God say? And what did God say? He directly takes the covenant, and now to the 3rd generation gives it directly to Jacob. So it's like this. We have God giving it to Abraham, but then we have, I should have put God in the middle. God giving it to Isaac, and God giving it to Jacob. So it's not like this.
Yeah.
You see the difference there? This is direct. That's really important, because at the end of this first dream, Jacob wakes up and he goes, if this happens, you will be my God. So at that moment, this becomes personal for him. And I was just thinking how in our families, as we go through the generations, we want each generation to take us out of the picture and go directly, have their relationship directly with God. That's not my grandma's God. I want my grandchildren to say, that's my God. I don't want them to say, that's my grandma's God. Or my grandma believes that. My grandma loves the Bible. I have to love the Bible because my grandma loves the Bible. Okay, that's not what I want. So I just thought that was a really good example. Anyway, that's what crossed my mind when I was reading that. So we get down to Jacob. Jacob goes and he needs to go get his wife. Right, and so he goes back to the same place, only this time he's at Laban's, which is his mother's brother, so he's at his uncle's house. And he sees the most beautiful thing he ever saw, and that's Rachel. And he works for 7 years for Rachel. He wakes up that morning and he finds out it's not Rachel, it's Leah, and they veiled their brides, so you would not know that. So, I still think he should have looked, but that's my personal opinion on that. Why he didn't look, I don't know. So then he has to work another 7 years for Rachel. He gets to have her after 1 week. Leah gets her 1 bridal week. And then Rachel comes in. From that moment on, we have a dysfunctional family. Because it goes like this. I'll take this off here now. We have Jacob, and he gets Leah, and he gets Leah's maid, which is, I think, it's either Bilhah or Zilpah. And then he gets Rachel, and then he gets Zilpah. I might have those two backwards. She might be her maid. So anyway, it kind of goes, and I should put Jacob in the middle just because I'm OCD like that. All right. So she gets pregnant and has a kid. All these kids are like, there's going to be this weird game they play, sort of. So she has Reuben, and that's the firstborn. Reuben is in position, he's the very firstborn son. And then comes Simeon, and then comes Levi, and then comes Judah, and then she stops bearing for a while.
Debbie, excuse me, are we working on last week's sheet?
A little bit.
Okay.
Sorry, I haven't caught up yet, so we're on last week's sheets a little bit. So anyway, we have these four fairly quickly from one wife. So I'm guessing we've got maybe 4 to 6 to 8 years going by, depending on how fast she gets pregnant with the next one, and the next one, and the next one. All right, at this point, Rachel's furious because she's supposedly the one Jacob loves, and she's not having kids. And you gotta remember back then, it's all about who had the son. It's all about that. And these two are in competition with each other. And it becomes quite a thing. So what she does is she does the normal thing for that culture. She gives Zilpah to Jacob so that Zilpah can have a kid on Rachel's lap, and that will be called Rachel's kid. All right, so we get, I'm trying to think. I think it's Zebulun. I might have these mixed up, and Dan. So this is number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay, in order. So there must have been some time. So I don't know if we have now 10 years, 8 years, I don't know, but we've got some time going by. Okay, so Leah sees that and says, well, if you're going to do that, I'm going to do that. So she gives Bilhah to Jacob, and Bilhah has, anybody know the next two?
Yeah, reversed. The maidservants are reversed.
My maidservants are backwards? All right. Do I have the right kids?
Let's see.
I don't know. Anyway, I can give you the first 4 and the last 2, and I know them exactly. The other 6 in the middle, I mix up. So, but I can get their names, but I get their order mixed up. Okay, so Zilpah has maybe Naphtali and maybe Gad. I don't know. Okay? All right. So now we have all these kids, and Rachel's still sitting there. Around this time, there's this little incident where Reuben is out in the field. He's probably a good-sized teenager by now, or older, whatever, I don't know. And he finds mandrakes. Mandrakes are a fertility drug in their mind. So Reuben belongs to Leah. So Reuben's out there with the mandrakes, and Rachel sees the mandrakes, and she goes, oh, give me some of Reuben's mandrakes. And Leah goes, no way am I giving you, So she actually sells, quote, or gives her husband to Leah for the night to get the mandrakes so that she will be ready to conceive, because she believes that's a fertility drug.
What is a mandrake? Is it a bird or is
It's it's like a root or a plant or something like that, okay? So that's why I'm telling you this is quite a dysfunctional family, because all you have to do is read between the lines on all the other stuff going on. Because if there's this kind of stuff, if she's selling Jacob to her to get the mandrakes, there's a lot more going on behind the scenes. Okay, well, it kind of backfires because she gets pregnant with numbers 7 and 8. No, 9 and 10. And that is, let's see, you probably had Asher and Issachar, right? Okay. All right, so by about this time, Jacob was ready to leave Laban, and Laban has tricked the wages for Jacob like 10 times now. He's made a covenant, a business type covenant with him, and he's broken it over and over and over and over and over. And there's all this stuff about breeding spotted lambs and breeding striped lambs and da 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 da. It's quite a convoluted story. Anyway, so they take off to leave, but right before that, actually, God says that He remembers Rachel, and she has her first son, which is number 11, Joseph. Whoops. I'm a little bit dyslexic, so if I do that, I switch things like that. So, and then they leave, and they come back to the land of Canaan, okay? And that's where, on the way back, that's where Jacob wrestles with God. He has to meet Esau, and there's that conflict, and they have a reconciliation of sorts. And for the time being, the reconciliation, if you notice, doesn't play out through the next generations, because Esau's descendants are always against Jacob's descendants. I'm getting my names mixed up. All right, it's real easy to do. So they come back, and he wrestles with God, and God changes his name. This is where Jacob becomes Israel. All right, now we have, the reason I showed you all this, because now we have the sons, or the children of Israel. See it? That's where it all comes from. And these are going to become the tribes of Israel. So if you didn't know, I figured you all probably already know that, but just in case I thought I'd show that to you. There's going to be child number 12, and that's Benjamin. And Rachel is going to die. That's going to be born in the area of Bethlehem. And Rachel's going to die in childbirth on that one. So there's the end of that in her. Rachel, when they leave, is also the one who brings some idols. She steals the idols from her dad's thing and hides them. And when Jacob doesn't know anything about the idols, so he gives Laban permission to search everything. So she pulls this stunt that says, I am with the way of women, I can't get up. So she's sitting on the idols. So that's how the idols, later the idols are found, and they have to be buried under a oak tree, I think, at Bethel. But I might have that detail mixed up because I didn't review it at all. So there's that. So, okay, so now the story of the dysfunctional family continues. These guys all grow up, and Joseph, becomes really the favorite, and he's the favorite primarily, I think, because he's Rachel's firstborn. So he is considering that this is his firstborn, because he's Rachel's firstborn, and Rachel's the one he wanted in the first place, right? So he gives Joseph the coat, which signifies that he's going to get the title of Bet-Ab, and he's going to do all that. And of course, the other guys don't like it. Well, Joseph's still a teenager, and there's one time when all the other guys are out, except for Benjamin, are out doing the flocks, and Joseph has to go check on them. and he brings back a really bad report. Well, he said, oh, they're not doing well, Dad. They did this and that and that and this. And you go, oh, Joseph, don't do that. But he did. So later, that's in the story. And then Joseph gets his dreams, and he tells the dreams. And it would be very hard, I think, to be 17, get a dream from God, and not tell your family about it. But in this case, maybe he should, maybe he shouldn't have, I don't know, because nobody liked the dream. Even Jacob did not like the dream. So then, you know, they go up and they are taking the flocks, and they're going way up here into this area, and they're down here. This is about where they live, down in this area, and they're going up here. And oh, I forgot a couple big stories. Backtrack. Gotta backtrack. This is important. There's one time when they come back and they go to Shechem, which is right about here, and they have a sister. Her name is Dinah, and Dinah goes over to Shechem to see her girlfriend and have a good time there. Well, Prince Shechem, the town is Shechem, but the prince is also named Shechem. So Prince Shechem is Prince of Shechem, all right? So Prince Shechem is very attracted to Dinah, and he takes her and rapes her. All right, so then he decides that, of course, that doesn't go over well with all the brothers. She's got 11 brothers at this time. Benjamin's not here yet. And so Prince Shechem repents, and he decides, okay, I want to marry her. I want to take her in. I want to, you know, do all this. And the guys, these two particularly are infuriated. And so they say, okay, this is what you have to do. In order to take our sister, now you're wondering, it's not Jacob who's saying this. This is the brothers, okay? You and everyone in your whole city, which is like a city-state, your whole little country here, every male has to be circumcised. Okay, they go, and you know what? Prince Shechem wants Dinah so much, he says, okay, and he orders every male to be circumcised. Okay, well, there's some recovery period after circumcision, especially if you're an adult. And while they are recovering, and they cannot defend themselves, Simeon and Levi go in and kill every male there is. Wipe out the city. Yeah, just remember that. That's in a kind of a detail that's important. In the meantime, time goes by, and Reuben becomes very attracted to Bilhah. I think. I'm pretty sure it's Bilhah or Zilpah. You know which one it is? Yeah. I think it's Bilhah, because I think it's a crossover. But it might be Zilpah, who knows? And he and her have, he takes her, his father's wife, and has an incestual affair with her. Oh. Okay? So that's Reuben. So he has done that. In the meantime, Judah is the one who came with the idea. Well, when they throw Joseph in the pit, so move forward again. They throw Joseph in the pit. They're going to kill Joseph. Reuben comes in. He wants to regain his father's pleasure with him being firstborn. So he decides, he talks them out of killing him. And he goes away to try to do something. And by the time, and his plan is to come back, rescue Joseph, take him to the dad, and say, see what I did, you know, and get his position back. Well, while he's gone, Judah comes up with the idea, let's sell him into slavery. So Judah has just sold out his brother. I just want to tell you what's going on with the first four children. While his brother is in Egypt, you know all the stuff that happens to Joseph in Egypt. While his brother's in Egypt is when Judah has the situation with Tamar. And he, his oldest son dies, his second son won't take her, has a Levirate wife, and then he puts her aside, and then, the whole story. But he actually at least admits wrong at the end of it, because he says, she was more righteous than I. But Judah doesn't look really great at the moment either. Okay. While Joseph is down in Egypt and they're making their trips down there, because they're starving up there in Canaan, because the drought and famine has come to Canaan, and so they're making their trips down there. They have to bring, Joseph demands that they bring the youngest brother. And so, but they don't know it's Joseph, they just think that's Pharaoh's assistant. So he brings Benjamin down to Egypt. Now this really terrifies Judah, because he goes, I'm going to lose my other beloved son. Because that's the only one. He thinks Joseph is dead. So this is the other son from Rachel. So he's really terrified of that. So Judah does one thing of actual valor, and he tells his dad that he will stand for Benjamin. And so if anything happens to Benjamin, you hold it against him. Okay, so while they're down there, Joseph does the cup in the bag thing. Remember that? He takes his silver cup and puts it in Benjamin's bag, and then he goes and catches Benjamin with stealing his cup, and he's going to take Benjamin and throw him in jail for the rest of his life, or whatever it says, right? And then and Judah goes, and Judah stands. This is Judah's one saving grace. He stands before the next to Pharaoh, whoever this is, and he says, you can't do that. You have no idea what's going to happen to my father if that happens. So take me instead. So he gives himself as a substitute for Benjamin, which is one big thing, because Judah also by this time has a whole bet on of his own. Okay? So this is when Joseph can't take it anymore. And he goes into the other room and he just bawls and cries and cries and bawls, and comes out and reveals himself to his brothers and all that. And so he comes down. All right, so now you know the reason I'm telling you all those things is because when we get down to the very end of Genesis, in chapter 49, Jacob gives out the blessings to all 12 children. So go to chapter 49. Okay. Okay, so he starts in, he goes to Reuben first. He goes, Reuben. And I think it's down by around verse 3 or so. You will not be the firstborn. You will not be the because you defiled your father's bed. All right? So he is off the list. Okay? So Reuben cannot get it. Simeon and Levi, because of what they did in Shechem, means that their thing is that they will get no land in the distribution of the land. So everybody gets a piece, and whoever's called the firstborn gets the double portion. So they aren't going to get any. Now it turns out that Levi gets no land. Simeon gets a piece of land. I don't have the map with the territories for the tribes, but if this is Judah, Simeon is like this, and he gets absorbed into Judah. So he gets land, so to speak, but it's inside Judah. Okay, so his thing is to not get this. All right, so they don't get land. So remember what the big thing was, is you get the double portion, you get your land. The land is incredibly important. So the first three are off the list. Now we're down to Judah. And Judah is given the royalty. So there's three things that they give out. The person who is the Bet-Ab gets the leadership. Okay, he gets the double portion. And he is also, at that time, the priest of the family. So he would get the priest. He would be the one who represents them to God. Those three things are really important. So at this point, those three jobs are going to get split. Not one kid gets them all. Okay? They're going to get split. And this is how it divides out through the tribes. Judah is going to be the tribe of leadership, the kingly tribe. We don't know it yet, but Levi is going to be the priest. And Joseph is going to get the double portion. Okay? So if you go through the list of the tribes, you will never find the tribe of Joseph. He doesn't exist as a tribe. That is because Jacob, as Jacob is dying, he takes Joseph's two sons, which are Ephraim. What's that? A-I-M? E-I-M? E-I-M? Ephraim? I don't know. A-I-M. Anyway, that's wrong. I'm not spelling it. Ephraim.
P-H-R,
Ephraim?
E-P-H-R-A.
R. There's an R in there. There it is. And the other one is Manasseh. Okay, those are Joseph's two sons. So those two get ranked up a whole generation so that they match with these guys. The rest of Joseph's sons got to be Joseph's sons. But these two sons are now Jacob's sons. Okay? That's how they're claiming them as far as inheritance and rights go. So here are your tribes. Take Joseph out because he gets these two, and you count what's left and you have 13. But there's only 12 tribes of Israel, so now you're confused again. Okay, and that is because Levi is not counted as a land-owning tribe. And Simeon gets absorbed into Judah. Okay? So as you go and you look around, you're not going to see, oh, that land belongs to Levi, because Levi doesn't get land. And that land belongs to Joseph. No, you're not going to get that. He's going to have two sections of land. He's going to have Ephraim and Manasseh. Does that all make sense? That all plays out later in the story as to who does what and where they go and this and that. So I thought I'd just show you how that came about. So there's that. Okay. Now Jacob is going to die, and he gets to actually meet Pharaoh, and they are going to take him back to their homeland on this big event, and they take him back and they bury him in the same cave with Abraham and Sarah and Isaac and Rebecca, and Leah is going to be buried there, and Jacob's going to be buried there. Rachel is buried outside of Bethlehem, okay, because she died there. So she doesn't get to be in the cave with the rest of them. So you got your first 3 generations are all buried in this cave. I lost the name of the cave for the moment, but anyway, it's mentioned and I lost it. So
Is it Mamre? It came from Mamre.
maybe, yeah, maybe that's it. Okay, so as Joseph's dying, now Joseph is a lot younger. It says that all of his brothers came to him. Now maybe his brothers outlived him, or maybe that's his brothers' descendants and it's the families of the brothers. I'm not really sure, because I'm thinking, how does Joseph die before all the others? But maybe, and who knows. Anyway, after Jacob dies, they're really afraid that Joseph is going to finally take his revenge. And in theory, he should have. in all normal human function, he should have. And he doesn't. And that's where you get that very famous verse that says, you meant it for evil against me, but God meant it for good, to bring about the deliverance and preserve many people alive. That's Genesis 50:20. But then Joseph does something that's really important, and if you want to, I'm ready to flip to this week's notes. And this has to do with Joseph's bones. Okay, so this is sort of Joseph's bones to me are the segue between Genesis and what's coming, and Exodus. Joseph's bones are a big issue. And so here he is, second ranking as Pharaoh. He should receive a huge burial ceremony. He should be done up like a mummy and put in a sarcophagus and put inside one of those pyramids. That's what they should do to him, okay? So he agrees, and he says, you can preserve me, you can turn me into a mummy, you can put me in a sarcophagus, but you cannot bury me. So he breaks all Egyptian rules and makes them leave his sarcophagus above ground. And this is really important because you see, they are entering into 400 years of nothing happening. No word from God, nothing. All they have is an unburied sarcophagus. And that unburied sarcophagus is the promise that they get to go home. Because that sarcophagus has to be buried up in the land, up in here. It cannot be buried down here. Okay? So as long as they're looking at it, they have no Bible, they have no prophet, they have nothing else. They have an unburied sarcophagus, and that unburied sarcophagus is the promise that they will go home. So that was really, really important that he leave his sarcophagus unburied. When we get to the Exodus, in Exodus 13, which I'm going to try to, race through today, it will specifically say they will pick up Joseph's bones and carry them out. So as they cross the Red Sea, out in front, I picture it out in front. That's just, there's Moses out in front, or maybe Moses is last, but the guy's out front, and they're carrying on the poles Joseph's sarcophagus, and it is leading the way through the Red Sea, because it is the promise that they get the promised land to go home. When they get there and the land is conquered, you get to the end of Joshua and they're passing out the land, and everybody's conquered, the wars are over, they're ready to go move in, farm, make bread, whatever, set up families. They took Joseph's bones and they buried them in the land of Ephraim. He doesn't go into the cave with the 3 patriarchs. He goes into the land of Ephraim. Who becomes his first? This was his firstborn, and Jacob flipped him. So that's who got. So he is in that land. So it's a really important thing. It takes 485 years for him to get buried. Between he died and the time he's buried. So that's their only physical promise. It's the only one. So I always thought that was real important, that part of the story. Okay, so I'm going to do a little bit and then I'll take the break, okay? I want to talk about the timing of the Exodus. So I gave you a timeline. Joseph is approximately 1800 BC. By the time he lives, I can take this down. The dating of the Exodus is always quite some issue. There's 2 major theories. One theory is that the Pharaoh of the Exodus was from the 18th dynasty. And he is in around mid-1400s BC. And the other theory is it's the 19th dynasty. Oops, see? And that's around the late 1200s BC. So those are your 2 big theories, okay? These 2. If you go with this guy, your dynasty, your pharaoh of the Exodus is Amenhotep II. And his father was Thutmose III. And if you go with this one, it's Ramses. Okay, so there is it's very hard to tell, because I'll tell you the 2 ways to figure it out, all right? In way, way, way further down the line, into Solomon, when he dedicates his temple, and they have the big final dedication of the temple, it actually states that the temple was dedicated, what is it? I gotta look it up. However many years to the exact year after the Exodus. So if you can find, it's 1 Kings 6. I got too many things swimming around in my brain at the moment. I had this. 1 Kings maybe 8. Oh, darn it. Well, I'll have to find it during the break. But anyway, it gives us an exact...
1 Kings 6:1.
6:1? Yes, 480. Is that what it says? 480 years? Okay, 480 years. And they have that date is, 996?
968.
968, okay. Anyway, you take that back and you get about 1446 as the date of the Exodus. I would have to actually check it all out, but okay? So that's one date right there. At that time is Amenhotep II. And even that, I decided to check this out, on the Google, as my kids call it. And if you go to this Egyptian history website, they have that dynasty, this is the 18th dynasty, at this time range. And you go to another Egypt, I'm not talking Bible stuff, I'm just talking Egyptian. Go to another, and they have the same thing 50 years off. And then you go to another one and they have the same thing another 20 years off. So all these are, if even the Egyptian historical ones can't get it right, then I'm having a trouble figuring out what's going on. They do the same thing with this one. Okay? That this is the biblical evidence for this one. The biblical evidence for this one is in Exodus 1. Exodus, I think it's 1:3, 1:4, something. It says they, or maybe it's even farther down, 8 or 9. It says they built the city of Ramses. Now, if they built the city of Ramses, and Ramses has been named after Ramses, then they can't have done it up here because Ramses isn't alive yet, right? On the other hand, if you want to make it more complicated, you can find the city of Ramses in Genesis. So how is the city of Ramses in Genesis? So one person says, well, when Moses wrote it, he took current names and put them backwards so people would know what we're talking about. Well, that makes sense. So I don't know, so I'm just telling you. I have a tendency to go with the date more than the city of Ramses. That's my personal opinion. You guys can pick your personal opinions as you want. If you go with this one, there's a lot of really interesting things. For instance, I would have to show you the Tutmos III, there's Tutmos II, and his wife is Hatshepsut. Everybody heard of her?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. They are brother and sister from Tutmos I. No, maybe. All right. So if this is the case, she is the princess that adopted Moses. Okay? Which makes him the guy who ordered them to be thrown into the Nile. And it makes his father, who I think is Amenhotep I, the guy who ordered them prior to that to have the midwives kill the babies. And obviously some time has to go by, right? Okay. So now, when these two get married, she adopts Moses, They have one child together, and that's a girl. Her name is Neferuri. And he has an illegitimate son. And that illegitimate son is Thutmose III, which means that Thutmose III and Moses and Neferuri go up together in the palace, right? Because this is an illegitimate son, he does not have right to the throne. And one of the things that is in Egyptian history is that the crown prince is not called the crown prince. He's not called the crown pharaoh. He's not crowned. He's called whoever is the son of Pharaoh's daughter. That's the title of the crown prince. So whoever is the son of Pharaoh's daughter gets to be the crown prince. So in this case, whoever marries Neferuri gets to be the next pharaoh. So he turns it down. As a matter of fact, in Hebrews it even says, word for word, that Moses decided not to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter. So I thought that was really interesting, you know? So he turns down the throne. Those two get married. There's a lot of probably severe competition between these two, because which one's going to become the next pharaoh as they're growing up? He marries her, and they have Amenhotep II. Now, while Moses does as he turns down the throne, he goes to see his people. He thinks that they know. If you go to Stephen's talk in Acts 7, Moses thinks that his people know he's come to deliver them. Well, they don't think so. They're just annoyed to death with him. And he kills the guy. And then he has to run for his life because who's after him? Thutmose III. All right, so he runs for his life. He goes off and he goes out into the wilderness, and he stays out there for 40 years, and then God comes to him in the burning bush and he says, don't you worry, that guy's dead. So his son is now the one that Moses has to approach for Amenhotep II. All right, so then, and Thutmose III, by the way, is the greatest pharaoh in Egyptian history. He's the one that fought the Battle of Carchemish at way back there, and I mean, he's another thing they do is if you try to find any archaeological evidence whatsoever about Israel, Moses, the Red Sea, the plagues, anything, you won't find it. And the reason is, and I've actually read this, Thutmose III had his scribe write a thing, and they found, it's called a stela, and this is the Amada stela, and it says that it talks about how great he is, he's done this, he's done that, and at the very end the scribe says, I wrote this exactly as commanded. So they are masters at revisionist history. And they even found lots of places on the walls of their temples where they scraped off the carvings and recarved it so that the history would not, like if a new dynasty comes in, they don't want the old dynasty's great events showing. So the new one. So would an Egyptian allow the devastation of the plagues to be recorded? No, absolutely not. There's one more really interesting thing, and then we'll pray. Amenhotep II, his oldest son does not become the next pharaoh. His second son becomes the next pharaoh, and the legend is, his second son is called Thutmose IV. The legend is that he's the guy who fell asleep between the legs of the Sphinx. And the Sphinx, he has this dream, it's called the dream stela. And the Sphinx tells him that if he will clean up the Sphinx and restore it, then he will make him the next pharaoh. So there's that little silly thing, but there's that in Egyptian history. So one more little thing. Amenhotep II has a sarcophagus that they have found. But when they look at it, it does not match age or size or stuff. And if he died in the Red Sea, then he would not have a sarcophagus. So what they had is they had a plan for if something crisis happened to their pharaoh. There was a substitute guy who stepped in really quick and took over the identity of the dead pharaoh. So they have found another sarcophagus that was, they think, is really Amenhotep II, who was not embalmed correctly. Was bombed. It takes like 40 days for them to embalm. This one was done in like 2 or 3 days and hidden away. So they think that's who it is. Anyway, there's all these. To me, I just find it fascinating, and it's just fun to see how actually probably all the information really is out there. We just, it's kind of like the Ark. They, you know, Turkey doesn't want anybody up on Ararat to find the Ark anymore, and so, okay. That was a race through that. I'll pick up with some more after that. And this is a real big important thing, and I don't even have it on here, but it's when God announces his name. And I think I've shown you this before, how you take the verb I am, which is a verb, which is haya. And that means I am. It's like I am, he is, you are, you know, it is, we are, they are, that kind of stuff. That would be our being verb. That's just their basic verb. And in English, you could not, I mean, you would not be able to turn that into a proper noun. It's just not the kind of word you turn into a noun. You don't name your kid Being. This is Being. You know, this name is Being because I'm turning I am into a noun, and we're going to name him Being. I mean, that just doesn't. So, but that's what God did. God took the verb and turned it into the proper noun, and it became. Is that right? No. Yeah. And that's a JHWH. But if you put it into the way they pronounce it, okay? So when he says, my name is I am, it's literal. His name is I am, you know? And they took this. And right now in Jewish life, whatever, you heard the phrase that they say, yada, yada, yada. You heard that? Okay. That's this. Yeah, it is. That's what that is. So, so when God says that in the burning bush, that's quite a, he gives, that word is used in Genesis, but it's given as a title for the first time to Moses. Moses probably wrote Genesis, so he could use that word as he wrote it. But anyway, so that's a real important thing. And he tells, you can kind of get an idea now why Moses says, wait a minute, you want me to go back and visit Thutmose III's son? Right? And you want me to go and tell him that I'm going to take his slaves out? Because there's already relationships set up. You know, I mean, at least, maybe there's not, he may not have met him, but there's already history there. So there's a lot, and Moses doesn't think he can. We already know that Moses was trained well. So when he says that he stutters, maybe he really did, but in Acts 7, where Stephen's talking, he said that he was trained in all the arts and the sciences and speaking and everything of Egypt. So I don't know if Moses is actually a stutterer or if he's using an excuse. You know, it could be either way. And maybe he was trained in all that and he was still a stutterer. But I tell you what, when he stands on the mountain, which we're going to get to later today, and he talks all day long and says the book of Deuteronomy, I don't picture him stuttering. Because the entire book of Deuteronomy, other than maybe the last 3 or 4 chapters, is one day, one speech from Moses to the people, and it's really dynamic. So I don't see a stutterer pulling that off, but maybe by then he wasn't one. So I don't know about that. But anyway, God says that he's supposed to go back, and he gives him his signs, you know, the leprosy sign and the snake sign and the water to blood sign. And he's supposed to go back. And one of the first things he does is he gets a meeting with Pharaoh, and which, by the way, might have been quite an arrangement. He's a guy, you know, walk into the greatest nation on the earth, walk up to the door, to the guard at the door, say, "Hey, I would like to make an appointment with Pharaoh." You know. But he gets in there and he tells them to let the people go, and Pharaoh says, "Are you out of your mind?" and sends them out, and he makes the workload a lot worse. Well, later he goes back with Aaron, and they have their staff. And they throw the staff down, and it becomes the snake. And it, you know, and then the magicians throw their staff down and they become snakes, and this God's snake eats up their snakes. Well, one of the main there's, I don't know, 100 main gods in Egypt. There's 2 or 3 or 5 or a dozen or 20 main ones. But one of the ones that was just for the Pharaoh was the cobra god. And the cobra god was you know, they wore the cobra? Okay, and that was the protection of the Pharaoh and the Pharaoh's son. So the first thing he does is he attacks his cobra god, and it's his royalty god. You are in authority, and you are protected and whatnot, and my God is going to destroy that. That was what this sign was about. Because you always wonder, if you look at it and you go, okay, what's the point of the snake and the snake eating the snake, and the, you know, and you just kind of read that and you go, well, that's cool, God's snake won, but I mean, what, you know? But there's a point to everything. And the other thing you should know about Pharaoh is Pharaoh thought that the Amun-Ra, which is the top father god, when he becomes Pharaoh, he becomes that god's son. So he becomes a son of the gods. And he then becomes God, a god in the Egyptian pantheon, because he is now Pharaoh. So Moses is going up against the false son of the gods. So there's a lot to these pictures. And then as you go through the plagues, there is a main god that's in charge of the Nile. Because the Nile god, it produces the grain, because the water. Okay, so there's a main frog god. I had all the names, but Sekhet and all that, you can go on. They have all these things. There's each one of these plagues attacks a god.
That's interesting.
It's not just like, oh, God decided to, you know, send gnats, and oh, God decided to, you know, let all the cattle die, and oh, and boils, and there's the health god. The health god gets destroyed with the boils. So every one of these plagues wipes out their primary pantheon of gods. So now God is showing these people, see, that's not God. See, that's not God. I'm God. That's not God. I'm God. Got it? Okay, so that's what the plagues are about, which I found was really fascinating when I learned that. And another thing is that all these things that happen throughout the Old Testament that you go, what is that? They all have a meaning. Everything, you know, I know Bodhi Taney says this, everything means something. And everything does. Everything has a meaning to it. So that was an interesting thing with there. We get to plague number 10. Well, plague number 9, by the way, it's against the god Ra, the sun god. And it's the darkness. And it's a supernatural darkness, so much where they can't move. It's crazy. And then the very next plague is Passover. And I always thought, what a cool picture. We have the plague of the death of the firstborn, and right before it is the darkness. So what happened on the cross? Right before the death was the darkness. And so we have these pictures everywhere. And so that I find really good. But the Passover is a huge, major picture of redemption. I'm sure you all know they had to take the lamb. The lamb had to be perfect, had to have no blemishes, no spots, spots and blemishes means a blemish would be, I think, a birth defect. You are born with a black spot on your hand, on paw, on the neck, up some, and then a spot would be, or maybe it's the opposite, would be an injury. The lamb injured himself, and he's got a scar on his leg. Okay, so he's not qualified. So part of that refers to the sin nature as being born with it, and part of it refers to your own sins that you have produced. So we have both blemishes and spots. And Jesus has no blemishes and no spots. And the lamb had to have no blemishes and no spots. And then they had to take a lamb and had to live with them for 4 days. You take a lamb and you put it in your home with children, just because there's a child involved, and you live with it. What does that child do with that lamb?
Right.
I mean, that becomes that child's love of his life, right? And it is the favored pet of the family type thing. And they didn't have kittens and puppies back then, so the lamb was it. And then the dad takes the lamb, the most beloved one, and kills the lamb, and he puts the blood on the doorposts, which were probably made of wood. So you got blood on the wood. The picture is just unreal, right? Then they have to walk through the door. And then they eat the bread and the meat. And when God sees all that, judgment passes over. This is what you call a type. I'm going to tell you this because in the Bible, a type is a picture of Jesus. There are some things that are specific types, like it actually tells you that we have verses that tell us that Jesus is the unblemished Lamb. He's the Lamb of God who takes away the sins of the world. He has no spot. In 1 Peter 1:19, he says, without spot and blemish he was offered. In 1 Corinthians 5, it says that he is our Passover. So this is when the Bible states directly that event is a picture of Jesus. That is called a type. That's a specific type. Okay, there's a whole lot of things where it doesn't tell us directly that this is a picture of Jesus, but it's so blatantly obvious that you know that it's a picture of Jesus. But if you want to go into hard-nosed theology, you have to get the actual stated ones to call it a type. For me, I just consider them, if it's a picture of Jesus, it's a picture of Jesus, and then some of them are actually stated. This one's a stated one, so we have an actual type. And so he is, when John the Baptist says, that's the Lamb of God who takes away the sins of the world, everybody who was listening would have gone, oh, that's the Passover Lamb. That's what they would have thought. That would have been it. And to make it clear, Paul says he is our Passover, and Peter says he is without spot and without blemish and was sacrificed. Okay, so we got 3 pictures of that. So that's a real cool thing. That's the Passover. The day that the Lamb died, this is the Lamb died. Days start at 6 p.m. Okay, so the Lamb dies technically, if he dies in the afternoon, he dies the day before to eat it. Okay, so if you picture that forward at 6 p.m., remember how the scribes and Pharisees could not come into the Roman thing because they would be defiled for the Passover, which would start at 6 p.m. So Jesus is crucified on the day before Passover, and he has to be buried, and they have to have him buried really quickly because they got to get out of there and be clean for Passover. That's even all of his followers have to do that. So the timing is a perfect picture. Because they have to, and then so I just thought that was a really neat thing too. Then, what else do I have on the Passover? It's a picture of redemption. When we get to the Red Sea itself is the big Old Testament 100% main picture of redemption. And it is the story that is referred back to most. So like, I was asked a long time ago, if you were to teach one series to the children, which series would you teach? I said, well, you would have to teach the Exodus and Moses because it is the one referred to the most. Everything refers back to what happened to Moses in Exodus. And even in God's covenant, he's going to say, remember, I'm the one who brought you up out of the house of slavery. I'm the one who rescued you. And this event is the event. And it goes over and over and over and over, and it'll go, remember, this is our God who brought us up out of the house of slavery. This is our God who opened the Red Sea. This is our God. So this is the big event of the Old Testament. And so we're there. They pass over. The Israelites, the firstborn sons live. Pharaoh's son dies. Right here. No, this one. His son dies, which is why this one can become king, Pharaoh, and not the other one. And he dies there. I don't know how old he was when he died. The one place I read thought he was in his early 20s when he died. So I don't know on that, because you never know with all those Egyptian things there. The route. Got to cover the route. This is important because there's all kinds of different ideas about the route. And I'm going to tell you the two main ideas and then tell you which one I think it is until someone convinces me that it's the other one, okay? And they might, but I'm not there yet, so I don't know if you can see this. This is a map of the route of the Exodus, and over here is Goshen. And this is the best land of Egypt, by the way, and that's what Joseph got for his family, was the best land. And they live in, this is Ramses right here, and there's Succoth, and there's Etham, and by 6 a.m. the next morning, those people they had their sandals on all night, they probably stayed up all night, and they have their staffs in their hands, and they've got their food in their backpack, and their kids all lined up on a rope maybe, I don't know, and they're ready to go out the door. And you got to realize that this is about 2 million people. And the statement is 600,000, but that's only of men of military age. So you've got all their wives, all their kids, all the older ones, and you've got all their cattle, and you've got all their things, and they're now loaded down with gold and jewels because the Egyptian people said, oh, get out, go, and they gave them 400 years of back pay, which they didn't get before. So they have 400 years of back pay, so they're very wealthy, and they're leaving. But they're also a bunch of people that for 400 years have never led themselves, have never organized anything, they are slaves. They don't know, they haven't trained in military, they don't have a hierarchy of authority, leadership, anything. They have Moses. That's one guy leading, I don't even know how he could talk to them all. I mean, I'm still trying to figure out where were you, there was such an echo that 2 million people can hear what you said. And I know that's possible because when we were in Israel, you could stand at one of these amphitheaters and someone could be talking down in the middle and you could be up at the top and you could hear them. Wow. I mean, Martha started singing without a microphone and I could hear her better there than I could hear her in church without a microphone. That was beautiful too.
There was a group of us, a little choir.
It was a little choir, but you guys didn't have to sing loud to do it.
No, and in the picture, we're like really small.
Yeah, they're like this tiny little thing down in this huge amphitheater, and they're just singing with nothing. Anyway, so I still trying to figure out how Moses talks to them all. So he's got to at least have a strong voice. Just give it that much. And it says that they left here, and they're also following the cloud and the pillar of fire, and they go out and they follow Moses, and Moses follows the cloud. So that cloud and that pillar of fire are always there. And they leave here and they go down to about here, and this area right here, the obvious way in is this. Okay? Right here, Egypt has a border patrol, which is probably better than our border patrol. Because you can't get out, and others don't get in. And there's a border patrol here. And even if they could get out, the Philistines are right here. And this is the first battle, and God said, we're not going to go that way because I know the people. They're not trained. They're not ready. They'll get terrified, and they'll turn and run. And they'll go back. So we're going to do this. Now, here's one route. This is the traditional place where they cross the Red Sea. But it's often now being thought that they crossed down here. Okay? So they would have to get from here, across here, down here, and then Mount Sinai's over here. I've seen that as a thing. I haven't taken the time to read through the book and listen to the volume of information that says that yet. Not that I am going to throw it out and say I don't believe that. What I'm going to say is I haven't done that yet. But there's several reasons why I don't think that's it. But I haven't read to see all the stuff why they do think that's it. But there's border patrol. They get to about here, and God says, you can read it. He says, you have to turn back. You have to turn back. It's a huge thing. They're going, what's that, southeast? And they have to turn back and go southwest. Because there's the border patrol there, and God sends them back southwest. Now that would not make sense to the 2 million. And it probably wouldn't make sense to Moses because they have to enter back into Egyptian territory. And as they do that, and if you go back later in Numbers when it charts out exactly how far they went from here to here to here to here to here to here, it's 5 days from where they get to crossing the Red Sea. I don't see getting 2 million people from here to here in 5 days. I just don't see it. It's all I can think of to get 2 million people from here to here in 5 days. Okay, so it's and then when you get there, it's very interesting where God picks for them to go because He's leading the way. God's picking every night, every campsite He picks. He picks every because He's leading with the cloud and the pillar of fire, right? So. If I have the topical map, there's a mountain about right here, and there's a mountain about right there. And if you come in through here, there's a pass, and there's a huge, several-acre beach area right there. Okay, so there wouldn't be room for 2 million people. But there also, if you're sitting there, you've got the Red Sea in front of you. And way over there is a mountain you can't get around. And way over there is a mountain you can't get around. And right back there is the pass you came through. That means you're trapped. And Pharaoh has spies out, and they're following them, and they bring back reports. Oh, they're lost, they're wandering in the wilderness. And actually, that's what God wanted them to think, but that's not what they want them to think. And so this is a big test of faith. You know, you look at the story, you go, well, how come they just didn't trust God? I go, are you kidding? I probably would have freaked out. So, and Pharaoh changes his mind and he sends his army after, because they want their slaves back, and they want their money back, and they want their jewels back, they want everything back. And when he comes tearing through on his chariots and his horses to capture a bunch of people who aren't trained with their children and their pets, and I mean their lambs and their whatnots, you know, right? The ground shakes. And you can see why they are scared to death. Now, it is a trap. Egypt thinks that Israel's trapped. God thinks that Pharaoh's trapped. Because what he's going to do is he's going to open up, and a lot of maps show that they cross up in this area, right through here. Right between like these little lakes and such. I don't know, you might look at your map on your Bibles and see where it says, there's no Sinai Canal, the Suez Canal, it's not there, okay? That's not there. This is all swampy land. So yeah, it would be hard to go through swampy land and all that, but I cannot see Pharaoh's army being completely destroyed in a swamp. I mean, it seems to me like they'd be able to get out of the swamp. So I think that they came back, they came down to this little guy, they crossed over here, and that's where Moses holds his thing up. And by the way, that's about 17 stories deep. So they have to go way down and cross on the bottom on dry ground. And it's not just waves right here. Just think it. If you're walking through, it's not just waves like here. You're walking through like a street between two tall buildings. And it's not daytime, it's nighttime. It goes through at night, and the fire stands behind them, and it shines light ahead of them, and it leaves darkness behind them. How does the fire do that? But it leaves Pharaoh's army in the dark, and it lights the way for the Israelite people, and they go through, and at the head of the column there's the sarcophagus, and they walk through and they get through there. It's about 5 miles across. I stood on the edge of the beach one time where there was an island way out there where I could see just the bare edge of the islands sitting out there, and I found out what's the distance, because I wanted to know what the curvature was and what they could see. They could barely see land as they cross, because you only have about a 5-mile arch there. So they're across. If you were short, you might cross into the ocean without seeing it at an end point, you know? So I just want to see how dramatic this is. And the kids want to know, did they stick their fingers in? I don't know. Could they see fish swimming by? I don't know. I don't know. Was there a shark in there? I don't know. You know? I really don't know. And of course, this is the huge picture of redemption. They have been purchased out of slavery, and they have been taken through. Even in 1 Corinthians chapter 10, around verses 1, 2, 3, and 4, they describe this as a picture of baptism. It's the baptism of Moses. And it's true, they didn't get wet, but they went through the water. And so that's really cool. So that's another direct type, because the Bible actually says that's what that is. And so they go through there, and of course Pharaoh still has not figured it out. His son is dead, his gods, his cobra god that's protecting him, his father god that is son, he's the son of God, so he can go through, and he follows through, and they tear through, and they are completely destroyed. all the chariots, all the army, all the people, all the horses, everything. When I tell stories to kids, I don't tell them about the horses because they're more worried about horses than they are about people. Because, no, you can't do that to a horse. I love horses. We get to the other side and there's a big celebration. Of course, there's a big celebration and Miriam sings. And there's a chapter 15. We're on 15 of Exodus now. I'm trying to go fast. And they have, she sings, and within 3 days they are starting to travel south down here, and they are run out of water, and they have the springs, and he throws the tree into the water and it becomes fresh water, and that all has meaning. And then they go down another 2 or 3 days and they're out of food. Now, you got to remember, the cloud is still there. The fire is still there. They just went through the Red Sea. And they go, oh, you got to take us back because we're hungry. We'd rather have leeks and garlics.
Yeah, they start whining.
And that, yeah. Well, anyway, so Moses tells God. God already knows, but Moses tells God, and God says, okay, I was just testing them to see if they would trust me. And I wonder how many times I'm whining and complaining when God says, I just wanted to know if you would trust me or not. Oh, yeah, forgot about that. Yeah. So they have manna. You guys know the story of the manna on the ground, and if you gathered twice as much manna as you need and you hid it under your pillow, you woke up with these stinky worms. And if you didn't gather twice as much on Friday, you didn't have any food on Saturday, and it goes on, and God feeds them this every single day for the next 40 years. Every single day they get manna. And for those who trusted God, it tasted like honey cakes. And I thought, so I had with kids one time, I did this manna game, and we tried to figure out how all the different ways we could cook manna. Could you make it like a hot dog on a stick? Could you make it a roasted marshmallow? You know, I mean, we did all these silly things to see all the different ways you could cook manna. It was just a fun thing, and I always thought that was kind of fun. And who knows, maybe they had, really good manna cookers. Manna bakers, bake manna this way and that way, and eat it fresh, do it, whatever. So all kinds of stuff going on with bread, and fried manna, who knows. They probably had a blast with that. Okay, a little while later, they're out of water, and they're down in Rephidim, down here somewhere, or maybe they're not quite at Rephidim yet, and they're out of water, and everybody's thirsty, and it's really hard to be out. We were in the desert. It's called the Judean wilderness. It was incredibly hot, and it was like, give me some water right now. And I had not gone 3 days without water. I had gone an hour and a half without water. Yeah. So they want the water, and they're ready to kill Moses and go back. And that's when God says, Moses, take the staff and go and hit the rock. Now this is a direct type because it tells us that the rock was Christ in 1 Corinthians. When he takes the staff of authority, and he hits the rock, he is bringing judgment down on the rock as a picture of what's happening for Jesus Christ, to Jesus Christ. And what comes out? Living water. So much so. By the way, it's not just like a little creek. This was a flood of water, like the dam broke on a river, and all this water comes out, and he is the living water. So that is a direct type. A little while later, I'm going to get us down into Sinai. A little while later, the Amalekites. Amalek is the grandson of Esau. So that Ob has now become a tribe or a big a clan or a big nation, and Esau becomes Edom. Okay, so Edom is right here. This is where Esau's family takes up. Petra is in Edom. Lots of things are there, okay? And they find out, one of the groups there, called the Amalekites, go after the Israelites. And what they do is that there's always, you've got 2 million people moving down the map, and you're going to have the stragglers in the back. There's got to be stragglers. Somebody's got to be in the back. So they got stragglers. They decide to attack the stragglers in the back. And it turns into this big war. That's where Moses puts his hands up. They don't know how to fight. This is their first battle. So these people don't know how to fight. So Moses, and he can't hold his hands up very long. So Aaron is on one side and Hur is on the other side. And Joshua is down there trying to lead this battle. And I picture all, I don't know where they got their weapons. I don't know. I picture all the men who are the 600,000 who are the fighters practicing with a sword. And as long as Moses comes up, they are winning. And as long as Moses arms down, they are not. And that is so much a picture of God winning the battles for us, because I feel like we have a bunch of untrained men, and they're doing that. And of course they win before, and the Amalekites go away, or most of them die, or whatever. They come up later in the story. They're not destroyed entirely. And so now they're down at Sinai. And this is a mountainous area. There's one place I saw a map. I saw a picture that had a big open valley. And I pictured them all camped out in this big open valley. And that's where God does the covenant that we talked about. And the mountain is covered with, God comes down on the mountain with the cloud and the fire and the earthquake, and he draws the people up, and he has Moses go up, and they goes, do you think these people want to make a covenant with me? I will be their God, and they can be my people. And so Moses goes, you go down and find out if they want to have a covenant with me. So he goes down the mountain, and he goes, this is what God says. He's going to make a covenant with you. It's the Suzerain vassal covenant, and like we talked about. And they said, oh, yes, right? That was what they wanted. They wanted the big covenant. So he goes back up there to get the covenant, and he comes back down really soon and gets the people ready. He says, yes, God, they do. So he goes back down, and he gets the people ready, and God says the covenant out loud himself to the people. So when you read Exodus 20, that's God speaking out loud to the people. And later we're going to find in Deuteronomy that he said, you heard my voice, but you were not allowed to see my shape or my form, so that you could not build an idol of me. So it was really interesting to see that they hear him speak. They cannot handle it. They're horrified, terrified, so much so they probably didn't hear a word he said, and they're just shaking and dying, and like, oh, I can't handle this. And I can understand that. If I actually heard God speak like that, I probably would have a hard time paying attention to what he's saying, you know, because of the magnitude of it. So they say, no, Moses, you speak to God and find out what he wants, and you tell us, and then we'll do whatever it says, because we can't do it with this. So that is the beginning of the prophet. When God speaks to the prophet speaks to the people. And that is the beginning of an intercessor, someone to go between. So that is a direct type. Because later in Deuteronomy, Moses says, God will bring a prophet like me, and he will be the intermediary. So that is another type. I'm just pointing out as many that I can find real quick. Oh, the water from the rock, yeah, we did that. And they make the covenant. They say, yeah, and Moses goes up, they get the stone, he breaks it, and then there's the golden calf, and we did all this. And I got all the chapters mixed up, but they're all in there straight in your Bible. The Bible's got it right, and I got your chapters mixed up. And so they come down, and half of Exodus, do you notice on your picture here? We'll put Exodus and Numbers, and that's the primary storyline. Okay, so, and Deuteronomy and Leviticus are the extra information on how to worship and what's going on. Okay, so the storyline goes from Genesis, Exodus to Numbers to Joshua, if you want to go straight storyline. The other books are in there as books added for information. Now, actually, that's not entirely strict because half of Exodus is how to build the tabernacle. So that's not really storyline, that's instructions. And there's little bits of stories in Leviticus and things like that. But this is just basic to give you an idea of where the storyline goes. And so they're ready, they build that tabernacle, and I want to tell you about what happens when the tabernacle is built, and I don't have time, so I'll pick up there next week.
So we'll finish this next week.
Yeah. Dear Father in heaven, thank you for giving us such an amazing story. Thank you for telling us enough so that we can envision the drama of it all, the magnitude of it all, and how you have turned it into the most fantastic story ever in existence. And thank you for redemption. Thank you for that lamb. Thank you that water came out of the rock for us. Thank you for the manna. Thank you for all these pictures of Jesus. In Jesus' name, amen.